A Harvard Business School study found that companies that are regarded as highly data-driven are 3 times more successful in their decision-making when compared to companies who are much less data-driven. Are you, as a future fit leader, making your decisions based on credible data, or are you relying on instinct? I'm Zane Inglis. Welcome into Future Fit Leaders.
And I'm Ryan Sheppard, Japan headhunter and author of Sell Yourself Like a CEO.
So Ryan, I know this is one of the topics you're really passionate about. You're a very data-driven guy. Can you give us a few examples of why you really wanted to introduce this topic for our podcast this week?
Yeah, thanks, Zane. I'm seeing data-driven skills, data-driven decision-making skills as a theme popping up everywhere. It's appearing on job descriptions. It is appearing during discussions with clients. How do we measure this? And there's a clear sense in the market that for anyone who cannot measure their performance, there's a high risk of being cut these days. So it's well worth the investment to think about what data-driven decision-making means for you and look for ways to practice it in everyday life. As a goal-driven individual myself, numbers give me a way to monitor and measure things on a day-to-day basis to stay on that most direct path from A to B, B meaning where I want to go, what great looks like, and A, where I am today. So I like to use the analogy of, how when we're little or when our kids are little, we measure them on the wall and make a little pencil mark as to where they are, and we can see their growth, and it brings us great joy as parents to see our kids entering growth spurts and things like that.
Yeah, I feel like it's something that's going to be really relevant to individuals. You often talk about from a candidate's perspective or an employer's perspective. For myself, having grown up, my whole life being in sales, you're obviously ultimately measured on, whether you hit your target or not, and that impacts on how much money you make. The one thing I'm going to get into today is about what's not really measured effectively enough is how you achieve your target, how you're allocating your time, what's the most productive way to use your time. That I think that whether you're in sales or not, a lot of people who claim to be time poor are often time poor because they're not actually measuring how they're using that time and using a clearly defined process for setting priorities. So I think we can come into some pretty interesting discussions and topics that will be relevant for people no matter where they're sitting in their career right now.
Yeah, and on that point, you've heard me reference Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time book quite often. And there's an exercise in there that's been very pivotal for me to look at my time and then from a objective perspective, optimize that. And that's called, what did he call it? The delegation quadrant. It's basically, or the time audit. So what Dan Martell recommends is looking at how you spend your time for 2 days, and every 15 minutes making a note of what have I been doing for this past 15 minutes. And is that something I enjoy? And is it something that generates value, i.e. makes money? And if it's not, then find a way to either outsource it or delegate it. And looking at the time balance of how much time we spend on that versus what we should be spending or want to be spending our time on can be a wake-up call. So for me, using data and little exercises like that has helped me take back control as an individual, as a husband, a father, an employee, consultant, fill in the blank. It's helped me take back control because the numbers are telling me about how I am doing and where are the opportunities for improvement.
So this is coming from a sales background, when we prepared for this, I had a whole bunch of ideas talking about how you can improve the quality of the data in your sales forecasts and so forth. But just hearing that reminds me of 2 really specific examples with 2 completely different companies. One, they were looking to deliver 5% growth. They were sitting around 3% and believing it was impossible to grow more. The other company had just launched a new product that the CEO wanted them to spend 20% of their time promoting. In both cases, the employees claimed that they had no time to do that. And they gave a whole bunch of examples of what was taking up their time, but it had never been tracked. Doing something as simple as you just suggested, and this is going back a couple of years. So all we did was set up a really simple Excel file with the 5 key categories that they believed they were wasting time on, or they should have actually been spending time on. And at the start of each task, just typing in the time they started next to that category and the time they finished. And interestingly, the first example, where they were looking for 5% growth, they claimed that they were spending too much time servicing distributors. And they believed they were spending 40% of their time, but it turned out they were spending 15% of their time. It was something completely different. So they were just lack of awareness there. So they were potentially looking to fix a problem that wasn't there. And in the other example, once we had the data, we spent 30 minutes with each of these team members to workshop with their manager to figure out how to reduce their unproductive time. And we were able to create 1 day a week for that company. And in both cases, they exceeded their targets for the year by taking a proactive, measured approach. And it would have taken, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes of their day to measure in the Excel file. So what you're doing on a day-to-day basis can have multi-million-dollar impacts within an organization.
Yeah, I like to think of the analogy of a sailboat or a boat that's crossing a large ocean. For it to get from A to B in the most efficient way, the more often it monitors where it is and corrects course, the less energy is wasted, the more time is saved, and you're going to get to where you need to go with the least amount of resistance or cost, let's say. So for me, when I'm really doubling down and driving towards a big, hairy, audacious goal, or a BHAG, as it's called in the book, Good to Great, is monitoring the number one number each day. So in sales, sales is a great example, because in sales, we have a sales target. We need to know what we need to bring in by when. And by virtue of knowing the numbers every day, we're able to capitalize on each day as a chance to get there. Whereas if we miss one day, which can become very easily a habit, and underperforming salespeople out there, if we honestly ask ourselves, how often are we doing this? Good point. I should probably do that more often. That's a big sign that there's an opportunity for you to take control there just by looking at that number every day. Sometimes it can be scary. Sometimes it can be uncomfortable. And that's the point. To grow, we need to perform at the edge of our comfort zone, which means having the courage to face those numbers. But then the beauty is that we can boil what we need to do down into what can we do today? Because little things each day add up to mammoth achievements. So take the power back, keep track of what that number is every day, and you'll find yourself being much more confident, not only that you're going to hit your target, but also there's also a clarity and a confidence that builds up in oneself. Hey, I can do this. If I write down this and I do that next right thing that there is to close the gap, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. And start building up this inventory of accomplishments, which gives us confidence and also gives us clarity of self-proficiency and self-productivity, what we've done, so we can leverage those experiences to then get to where we want to go next, whether that's an internal promotion or marketing ourselves to other companies in the market.
Yeah, I think it balances a really important point too. I mean, I look at one company I worked with going back, a very large, famous pharmaceutical company, who wanted me to help them improve their area business planning for their first line managers. So I went through a review with a capture sample of what these guys were producing, and some of them were 70 pages long. And, probably 80% of it was just talking about what had happened in the past, which was data to a certain extent, but there was no analysis as to why certain things had happened, what were things they could, leverage and continue to do, what things should be stopped, and what they could do and replace those unproductive activities. Or other companies I work with, they just don't have any kind of action plans. They have a good product that sold itself, and when it starts to get tough, they just try to do more of the same. And one of the things I introduce is a very simple 3-page plan, a business planning template for the salespeople, where tell me what your overall number is. Tell me what your number is you should be delivering from new proactive sales that you need to go and generate. Now let's pick one key initiative that you want to really focus your efforts in on over a 12-month period to ensure that you achieve that. Let's break it down. So what's the number you're going to deliver? What are the milestones we need to deliver every month? What are the KPIs? And consolidate all into one page. And then thinking about some of the roadblocks. And then on the second page, just a really simple bullet pointed timeline of the key action items by month. And then the third sheet is just a summary of what you actually delivered in the previous month, what your successes were, what your challenges were, what roadblocks you faced or will face, and what you plan to do. And going from doing everything in your mind and having verbal discussions with your manager to all of a sudden having to justify what you believe the highest priority action is and getting feedback from your leaders, or you as a leader giving feedback to help to ensure that your team are focused on the right target, but then how it's actually going to be achieved and is that plan realistic? You would be surprised the impact that it has. We're seeing around 80% of these people achieving their targets for this new business development purely by making it measurable, making it visible, and providing that ongoing feedback. So you're analyzing the outcomes every month.
Two more examples for viewers today. Practical takeaways, one for job seekers or not even just job seekers, but any candidate who wants to be prepared for the future and start planning ahead about where they want to go and what kind of opportunity they want next should it arise. And that is to know how your performance is being measured and keep track of that, because what employers or interviewers want to hear is, tell me about a time when you've done fill in the blank and how were you evaluated? And that should be a metric. It should not be a feeling or emotion. It's really meaningless. Great, fantastic, tremendous, very successful. Those hold no weight. But if you can tie that to a metric such as time, money, customer feedback, an NPS score, someone that you promoted as a result of your leadership, we need facts and specific metrics. Become aware of what those would be for whatever opportunity you're aiming for next, and think about, okay, how can I be measuring what I'm doing today, this week, this quarter, this year, so that you can condition the way that you think to be able to showcase those metrics in an interview. So speak ROI, turn your resume responsibilities into outcomes-driven, ROI-driven. Take out the fluff and the buzzwords and replace those with facts and metrics. And then for employers or interviewers, it's so easy to hire by gut feeling. Oh, I like this person. They remind me of me. And then that's how the candidates get through the process. But imagine having the luxury of choosing from 5 fully qualified candidates. How then are you going to make a decision? Yes, there's going to be a likability factor, but you probably want to look at the skills that you're looking for that role and who ranks highest to lowest from more of a scorecard perspective. And that's something that's done as part of a search methodology or a retained search. When we're partnered with a client, committed to fill the role, we've taken a thorough brief, which means that we know how to assess that candidate against a criteria. So then when we're bringing the client a short list of candidates, we're not just passing over the resume or a short bio of their career. We're also sharing with them a scorecard or some objective breakdown of how they stack up against the criteria. And then the way that we do that is by asking for situational examples. Tell me about a time when you have faced a challenge recently and how did you overcome it? And what they're looking for there is measurable results, metrics, time saved, money made, market penetration, etc. All of those things. So if you can't do that, no matter how much the interviewer likes you, the way the future is going is if they can't get what they need to scorecard you fully in the interview, they don't have what they need to pass you on to the next step. And this is becoming more and more common. So the best thing that candidates can do is to prepare ROI-driven stories. And the best thing that employers can do is think about how they can objectively assess candidates more to make data-driven decisions in the form of a scorecard, for example.
The example I would give, it's always interesting in these conversations that listening to your stories trigger memories of examples that I hadn't even prepared. But as a trainer and a coach, I'm often asked, how do you evaluate the return on the investment? like I said before, it's really hard. But another example I do is when I do a classroom training, for example, a lot of the companies, particularly big corporates, will want to give out a questionnaire to the team and get them to score it as a way to measure how effective the training was. And my opinion is if it was challenging, they probably, don't like it as much. If it was easy and fun, they'll rank it high. But what I have them do is the participants have to commit to 2 items from within a day's training that they think they could apply to be better, give them more control, deliver more, make more sales, for example. One of the clients I worked with during COVID, one of the key actions in our project was to have a quarterly follow-up on how the team had applied just fundamental skills like improved deep dive questioning skills or gaining better commitment from our clients. They told us what they wanted to improve, and every quarter we'd measure that by saying, how did you apply it, and what were you able to achieve that you don't believe you would have got had you not used that skill? And actually tracking the new opportunities that they spoke about and the conversion rates. And in 12 months, we had $1.2 million worth of sales that was directly attributed by the salespeople themselves explaining how they'd applied a new skill to get a new opportunity. So to me, giving someone a survey that they give you a score out of 10 on the day of whether they enjoyed something, it might be data, but it's not worth anything. It's actually how you applied that in the real world and a measurable outcome. And then when you have to report to your global leaders about what happened, with the $100,000 project you invested in on sales growth, and you can show them they had $1.2 million return, no one's going to argue at that. And similarly, if you're a manager coaching your team and you're asking them to improve something, follow up and see how they did and what they actually achieved by making that change that you had asked them to do to see if it was worth the effort.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Zane, but I've been with 3 companies now. My current company has the most mature employee base. We're mostly family people, 30s and 40s, even 50s, some 60s. And there's much less data tracking than other companies, which is great. That's kind of the brand of the company in the recruitment community is, no KPIs. You're free, we trust you, just, generate money and be compliant because we're a listed company as well. I think I'm allowed to say that publicly. But I can imagine how in other companies where you also have a matured base of employees, there's less of that disciplined micro tracking, but then as a result, what you get is behavior that is like, I know how to do my job. I've been doing this 10, 15, 20 years. So I'm going to do what I think I need to do because I don't think I need to do that. And I'm not going to be monitored by some micro KPI. So I'm not going to do that. Does that resonate?
It happens in all of the large organizations I work with. That people see things like KPIs and transparency as a lack of respect. You don't trust me. You don't trust me to do what I'm doing. And this is particularly the case in, when you're dealing with B2B organizations. And I always give them the example that, particularly in Japan, their retail experiences, world class. And I give the example of a mobile phone carrier. Every shop you go into in Japan for SoftBank, the employees are dressed the same, the shops look the same, the experience is largely the same. So it gives you a sense of comfort because of the brand continuity. Every Toyota showroom you go into in Japan or anywhere in the world for that matter, you have an expected standard. But when you get into B2B sales, you've got all of these individuals. There could be 1,000 or 2,000 salespeople within some of these mega companies going out doing their own thing. And I say to them, when you move to another region and someone comes to take over your customers and they handle them in a completely different way, how does that make the customer feel? Does it build trust and reassurance, or does it start to create a sense of uncertainty? So by you doing your own thing, it is creating a big risk. And if you went and, for example, signed up for life insurance, would you trust a guy who came there with no structure about what he was doing? He was just trying to have a verbal conversation with you. There were no contracts to sign. Heck no, you wouldn't do that. But is that the way you're approaching your customers with no data-driven decision-making with limited preparation, not following any kind of, best practice. By asking them questions like, rather than telling them you're doing it wrong, people start to realize and see the risks to doing it my way, because company strategies are not designed to hinder you. They're created by smart people who have the time to think about it and analyze data in a way you couldn't do as an individual, right?
Yeah.
So a little bit of a long-winded answer, but you're 100% right that it feels nice, but I see a lot of risks if you're not data-driven and you're not working to a structure.
Yeah, so I think two practical steps anyone can take away from today's video. But what is your dashboard, number one? What are the numbers that your skill or function is being measured on? For marketing, that could be market share, market penetration, et cetera, market size, customer feedback score. For sales, that's going to be actual versus goal. And it could be different for everyone, but what are your numbers? Know your numbers, have your dashboard. And from there, the second step is start learning how to see a story in those numbers so that you can make better decisions. What are these numbers telling me? And this is a daily thing. All you can do is make an educated guess based on what the data is telling you. So start practicing and exercising those muscles today for different areas of your life. Pick one, start there perhaps, but what's your dashboard? And start making decisions based on the story that data is telling you.
And don't just rely on your own observation of the data. Use AI. Give ChatGPT a little bit of background on what the data is related to. Give it the data and say, give me some suggestions or observations here from this perspective or this perspective, and it will help you look at the data objectively and identify things that you may never have considered. So these are, just a number of examples to show you all how important data can be in your day-to-day life, in your own personal context, in your small team or your business's context. Feel free to reach out to us in the comments and share something that you would really like to measure, but you're not sure how you could measure it, or let us know an example of something you have measured and have seen a great result, because I think that's the key. Is theory is one thing, but it's real world examples that help bring things to life. So we'd love to hear from you there. Something you'd love to measure, but you're not sure how you could do it, let us know. We might be able to give you some advice.
And if I could do a little plug to on an ebook that I've just launched, which is free, and this is how to reframe your resume and speak ROI. So it is an exercise that will help you become data driven, and it has some examples in there. So for example, what you don't want your responsibilities to sound like on your resume is manage product launch timings and regional vendors. There's no data or measurability there. But if you can say, accelerated go-to-market by 2 months across 3 regions, boosting early revenue by 1.4 million. And the reader is going to be able to resonate with that a lot more. So what's included in this free ebook is also some ChatGPT prompts, so you can upload whatever resume you have, and it's going to help you kickstart that process of reframing that into ROI. There's this market value planner, which helps you look at what is your target role, what is your target salary, what results can you prove today, and then what are some results that you need to prove to become qualified for what that target role is, and take one action. So the income difference between a director, VP, and C-suite exponentially bigger. So it is well worth the time to reflect and set some goals, work backwards from what you want to be making, and then everything else can fall into place from there. So we'll put this link in the description, and then hopefully that can help people apply something from today.
Check the description of this video. We'll list all the books or the concepts or the links to things like this that we mentioned, so you'll be able to download them. And we look forward to seeing you next time on Future Fit Leaders.
Thanks, everyone.